the show.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. I've been so excited to get you on. I've been following your work for a long time. Read your book. Thank you so much for giving that to the coaching community and the golf
Yeah.
community because it's so incredible. And we're going to dig into a lot of that. But yeah, I'm like a kid in a candy store right now, trying to get better at the mental side of golf and trying to help my players coach them a little bit better. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate the time.
Yeah, my pleasure for being here. I'm looking forward to it. So, wherever you want to go, let's explore.
Yeah, so I've got so many notes, and that we've texted back and forth a little bit, and like I've got probably like 2 days worth of topics. So we'll see where this leads us. But I thought we'd start with just the anatomy and the brain, right? So, like, can you explain like the parts of the brain and then what they're responsible for, and then I think that'll kind of lead us into, a nice discussion of, how we're going to help our players and how the players are going to get better.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of parts in our brain. Um, if we were going to make this kind of practical for people listening, you can kind of divide our brain into two parts: old and young. Old are the parts of our brain. So if you think about your brain, so if you were to point like in your forehead, like between your eyes, that's the youngest parts of our brain. The outer shell is essentially like the newest parts of our brain as it's developed over time. As you go backwards and down towards our brainstem, you're getting into the more rudimentary survival based, like basic need meeting portions of our brain. Okay. So if you're kind of just break it up into old and new, old being the kind of more prehistorically oriented parts of our brain, the new being the younger parts of our brain, like the part that you and I are using right now, having a conversation. The technical term here would be like our cortices, specifically the prefrontal cortex, but it's kind of the outer layers of our brain that where we kind of have our conscious, rational, imaginative, kind of creative thinking, problem solving stuff happens in there, right? Stuff that when we operate on, like kind of gives us a little bit of room to do some stuff. Then the older part of our brain is running like whatever our brain thinks it needs. So, like if you get hungry enough, it'll start shutting down the prefrontal cortex in your brain to just prioritize you need to eat because it's a need that if you don't get met, your body will eventually start shutting down, right? So this is important to understand because two things. One, the older part of our brain that is running what we either need or tell ourselves we need is way faster and way stronger. If we're putting in this in like a practical golf context, if I tell you, hey man, just relax, but you're feeling some anxiety, it doesn't just turn off because that part of your brain that can consciously think, oh, I would prefer to be relaxed right now, it's not running the show. It's not faster and it's not stronger. This is also the part of our brain that's running what I call our default settings. That's our habits. Our basically, it's kind of dictated by our history and our interpretations of it. The prefrontal cortex in our brain is where we do some active learning kind of in time and where we can make conscious rational decisions, provided our old brain doesn't need to be running the show, or if it is, it's running it in a pursuit based way for us. So it's important to understand that because most of the way that we instruct people is trying to operate from this like conscious rational thinking part of our brain under the assumption that it's the one running the show when we're under pressure, which it may or may not be. And then also with that comes like if you understand that, you can help, we can learn a little bit differently, we can pay attention a little bit differently, and understand that things like willpower and distracting ourselves under pressure and all that stuff we typically have historically leaned on in the performance psychology realm, there's very specific neuroscience reasons why that doesn't work for us, and at least not out of short-term settings.
What, and this is sort of off topic a little bit, the vagus nerve, like what is that? I've been listening to a lot of podcasts and doing a
Sure.
little bit of research on like how that drives a lot of our behavior. Like, can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, the vagus nerve, spelled Vagas or US, not Vegas like Las Vegas.
Right.
It is the primary nerve between our brain and our heart, like our actual, like the actual beating heart, not necessarily like the heart of a human necessarily. And it's basically the primary nerve highway between our brain and our body and the messages that they send back and forth between each other. Okay. So for example, If you are feeling anxiety, oftentimes we feel that in a lot of different places in our body. But one of the primary places we feel that, or feeling nervous or excited, is in and around our chest. And
Right.
that
Yeah.
sensation, those sensations are hard to ignore in large part because that nerve is going straight to the brain, and the messages from the brain are coming straight back about how to do that, whether they are coming from the old brain or the new brain or a combination thereof. So that's an important nerve because that's the primary roadway between the two. And if again acknowledging that, that means that your body and your brain are communicating back and forth between each other, and we want to address both if we're kind of taking a comprehensive approach to what we do and how we do it.
That's where like panic attacks, I guess,
Well, you're going to feel it. Yeah,
happen.
panic
Yeah.
attacks
Yeah.
start. Everything starts in the brain, but you're going to feel it
Yeah.
largely in your chest. And part of you're going to feel that is because your sympathetic nervous system, that is the upregulating side of our nervous system. Parasympathetic is downregulating, meaning where we get calm, relaxed, and more in a state of rest. The sympathetic, when it gets turned up, your brain is designed to know, and your body is designed to feel that. So most of our agitating emotions or agitating sensations are a sympathetic upregulation that are trying to tell us something, that we either need to avoid something, we need to hold still or freeze, or there's some type of thing that we need to protect or guard against.
Yeah.
Similarly, though, when we are excited about something, we do often feel that in an a chest type area at times as well. So again, it's just like the main highway where there's a sensory experience between brain and body.
Yeah. It's interesting listening to some of the research and talking about how it changes, like a lot of the things that depression and people are dealing with. And I've gone through panic attacks and had some anxiety issues in the past. I'm doing much better now, but
Yeah.
I was just curious. I was curious about that. Thank you for sharing
Yeah, and
that.
one of the things that we'll see, like let's say for example, you're having a panic attack. You cannot attack a panic attack with cognitive thoughts. Like if again telling someone to relax
I
or it's
know.
just going to be okay.
No.
What you
Nope.
have to get into is their sensory experience. So that would be you, essentially tuning into your breathing, maybe being curious about the fact that you're feeling what you're feeling, or tuning into something else tangible. Again, that's changing the sensory feedback loop between body and brain via the vagus nerve, which is communicating directly with the old brain, which then you essentially what you're communicating to it is like you're actually safe even though you think you're not.
Yeah.
Which again, there's a lot of neuroscience layers to that, but you're on the right track there.
Yeah. I remember I was post marathon almost death situation where I started getting them. That's a whole other story, but
Yeah.
um, once I was I figured out the diagnosis that I wasn't going to die, then I was able to kind of regulate it with my breathing
That's
and
right.
meditation and stuff. It was such a mental battle, which a lot of our players go through, I think, during stressful situations is in golf. So I didn't know that I was going to go in that direction. That was a little bit off the cuff, but
Yeah.
I wanted to start with, again, some of the things that you talk about in your book, and I've listened to a lot of your interviews and podcasts. Is you discuss what you call the doing mode of mind, and as opposed to the being mode of mind. Give me your thoughts on that. Kind of explain it, and I think that'll lead us into some really interesting
Sure.
avenues.
Good. So a doing mode of mind is a phrase that encompasses, again, both of these are in relationship to our own inner experience. Our inner experience is our thoughts, our feelings, our sensations, like what's going on in our internal environment. A doing mode of mind is me trying to do something with those feelings. So let's say, for example, I'm feeling some anxiety or some panic. Doing would be like, how do I turn this off? Or how do I smother it with something else? Or essentially, it's like I'm feeling and thinking a certain way. I need to fix it. The analogy I use in the book is it's like I treat my internal environment like a vending machine that's broken and I need to be able to fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, again, it's very well intentioned because that type of doing is often a really viable external problem solving for us. Like if you've got a math proof or a carburetor that needs fixing or whatever that might be, like a doing mode of action typically leads to change in a productive way, provided it's guided with some type of information, right?
Right.
Internally, though, directed, It's not. And the reason it's not is because our thoughts and feelings, whatever they might be, however asinine they might be, however uncomfortable, they're not broken. It's our nervous system and our brain operating exactly how it is supposed to be operating based on the situation we're in, plus whatever psychology we are bringing to that. Right. So what many golfers will probably be able to relate with is I feel a certain way, and then I'm trying to do something with those thoughts and feelings, turn them off, smother them, change them, replace them. A lot of these kind of surface level psychology techniques that don't work. Like for one that is really common to golf is I'm feeling a little bit uncertain. I want to try to convince myself that this is going to go okay, or just trust my skills, right? So I'm just trying to create a feeling or a sense of certainty because I don't have one at the moment. That's our doing mode of mind. I'm trying to problem solve what I'm feeling internally so that I can then do something externally.
Unstable confidence, right?
It leads to a lot of unstable confidence
Yeah.
because everybody has funky thoughts and feelings. And if you're going to be under pressure, or even in a social or a casual game, like you wouldn't sign up for it if it was totally stake free. Like that would be very boring and unexhilarating in any way.
Right.
So we're going to have some scratchy internal experiences. And even if you just want to get better at golf, like a good golf lesson is going to include some discomfort, changing
Let's
a
hope.
grip, moving
good
in a
one.
different way. A good one is going to,
Yeah.
because if you didn't, it wouldn't actually trigger any learning or different change for you, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
we all have like pretty tumultuous internal experiences at times. The challenge with when I try to do something with it, as any golfer here would know, it's going to amplify. So if I tell you you're feeling anxiety, you need to relax, that's my way of fixing and doing something with that feeling, you're probably going to turn that anxiety into panic. Because next conclusion you're going to make is, well, if I'm feeling this way and I can't just turn it off, that must mean it's even more broken than I thought it was in the first place. Now what happens is the priority for me in my performance is how I'm thinking and feeling, not doing the thing that is external, which is trying to get this golf ball from where it is now to as close as I want it, as close to my target as I can get it. So the challenge is it turns our focus and our priorities inward. It often makes us feel worse. And the reason we stick with this is we often think that's the way that we are supposed to interact with our own thoughts and feelings and sensations, right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Right.
So you mentioned in the book one of the visuals that I really like was the raindrop.
Exactly. Like
Can
a
you
raindrop.
describe? Yeah.
You think of a raindrop falling from a cloud. It's just on the way down. A doing mode of mind, which often includes us moving from the past and the future psychologically, it tips this raindrop and it just becomes unbalanced. And like it's going to get to the ground when it gets to the ground. But when we start to do stuff with our internal experience because we just don't like it or we think it's something that we're not supposed to have, we also, like that raindrop, we become unbalanced, right? The opposite of this, or we might say the counterbalance to this, is what we call a being mode of mind, which is you're just allowed to think and feel, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your thoughts and feelings have any value to them just because they exist, right? Just because I think, oh man, don't hit it left, doesn't mean I actually have to hit a golf shot through that. It's also not a precursor to the future, and it's not a fact just because I have it. So a being mode of mind is rooted very much in a mindful interaction with our inner experience. Mindful defined as I pay attention on purpose, without judgment, and as things are, meaning nothing needs to be fixed. It just is. But it also doesn't mean that just because I think it and feel it, I have to operate from it, right? So that's, okay, I feel a little bit uneasy. Okay, well, that doesn't mean I have to steer a golf shot out there. Or I'm feeling anxious. That doesn't necessarily mean you're in trouble. What it just means is you're feeling anxious and you're allowed to. And what happens when people are allowed to think and feel freely is that we start to see that our thoughts and feelings become these passing kind of transitory events. They come and they go, and they don't necessarily mean anything. An analogy we might use is you're at an aquarium and your thoughts and feelings are the marine life behind the glass, and you just observe and they just are what they are, instead of me pounding on the glass trying to get them to move in a certain way that may or may not be valuable to me. And then what happens is when I learn to just have thoughts and feelings without giving them any value simply because I have them, I can shift my focus and make the priority the thing that I'm actually doing externally, which would be trying to play golf well or converse with people or whatever it might be, or whatever's just in my present at that time. most people are plagued with, if I'm feeling a certain way or thinking a certain way, that's bad. I shouldn't be doing that. And they start judging it, and then start trying to change it. Then they feel worse, and then they become very distracted. We also might say it makes it very difficult to enjoy an experience that you're in if you are constantly evaluating and trying to fix what's going on internally for yourself.
Yeah, that's so deep, but it's so true. I back in the day, I used to do a lot of Tony Robbins programs. Probably sounds familiar if you've. I'm sure you've dove into some of his stuff, but it was all about like accepting the emotion that you're feeling, right? Label it,
Yep.
and then be able to deal with it. Like you said, it's like don't tell somebody to not be anxious. That's not going to help them.
Yeah.
Right? It's like acknowledging it and going, okay, now how do I get out of this, or how do I get more into the present time of whatever the tools that you have, which we'll talk about.
Right. Yeah, and what you're really talking about is I'm allowed to have this. It's not a bad thing that I am. I just am. And if I can if I can label it as this is anxiety or this is unease or whatever gradient of what I'm feeling is, that is an observation, not a judgment. So it's not I shouldn't be feeling this. This is bad. It's I'm just feeling this.
It's reality.
And if I asked any golfer, have you played well feeling kind of crappy? The answer is yes. So you don't have to feel a certain way to play well. We would prefer to at times, but it's not required.
Yeah, I love that. So what I really love about your philosophy, and we've all, and again, we're sort of hopefully going to debunk a lot of the old school sayings, I guess, or methodology of what we've heard from us, golf coaches that are trying to like be a part-time mental coach a lot of times for our players because we're there, right? I mean, we got no other avenues. Is the meaning of time, right? So being on time, as you call it, and then how do we get on time, which is for what you describe as the present. So speak a little bit about that, and I think that is probably the main thing. It's funny. John Dunnigan, do you know John Dunnigan, my friend?
I don't. Mm-mm.
Yeah, top 100 coach. He just spoke at one of my workshops, and he's a big fan of yours. And he talked about getting players to actually pay attention. And he said, think about what that statement says. Is there's a cost.
It's an investment.
To paying attention,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Absolutely, yeah. So that really hit me, and I use that in my teaching a lot now. It's like it's not just about telling somebody, "Hey, you need to focus." Like, what does that really mean? Right?
Exactly.
It's like,
on what?
On what? Exactly. Yeah. It's like pay attention to this. Pay attention to this feel, or pay attention to this piece of the swing that you're working on. So talk about time.
So if we could talk about time, we're really talking about focus. Okay, focus works on 3 planes for our brain. It works on temporal focus. Temporal is a fancy way of saying time, past, present, or future. One of the cool things about our young brain is that it can consider what was then, what is now, and what might be later. So it's very helpful for us in a lot of different ways. It can trip us up in some. The other way is temporal focus. I'm sorry, not temporal, but attentional focus. Attentional focus is like essentially what are my thoughts occupying, okay? And the other is visual focus, what I'm actually seeing, okay? If we think about something like flow state, which everybody would bottle up and do whatever they want. Flow state is
trying to get there.
It's a fancy way of saying all 3 planes of focus, temporal, attentional, and visual, are aligned. It's particularly the temporal and the attentional, which means what I'm thinking about is happening right now without interference from something else. So it's everyone has heard you play present or be in the present, play one shot at a time. But to your point, well, what does that actually mean?
Right.
Well, what that means is I'm actually focusing on the task at hand in front of me as it's happening, and that's it. So I'm not making up for something that's already happened. I'm also not worrying about something that hasn't happened yet. I'm not adding tasks that don't exist in the time frame that I'm already in. So flow state is not this mysterious thing that people tend to think of it as. It's I'm only focused on doing the thing in front of me when it's happening, and I'm not adding anything else to it. That's why it feels easy. I'm only doing the thing that I'm actually doing, nothing else attached to it. So the phrase I use with often clients is, can we be on time and on target? On time means, can you be in the time frame that you're actually in with your attentional focus? So can your temporal and attentional focus be in the same place? And then can we put your attentional focus on your target? Because golf, first and foremost, is a target sport. Like, it's this thing is here. I'm trying to get it as close to there as I can, whatever that target is that I've decided. That's another way of saying the only task I'm asking myself to do is the thing that's in front of me, which is to try to get this thing as close to my target as I can. And any player that I talk to, regardless of their skill level, I say, what time frame do you play your best and most enjoyable golf in? It's always the present. And it's not like, oh, you just won the lottery. It's like, no, that's how our brain works. So when we are on time, we are only asking our brain to do one thing at a time in the time frame that it's in, which is why it feels easy, why it feels enjoyable, and we don't have a bunch of distraction to us. So flow state is essentially a state, a psychological state void of distraction. Well, if I'm in the present physically, what would be a distraction? For sure, anything from my past and anything in my future that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about and this is one of I've stole from you, is you can't control the outcome.
Cannot.
Right? So
it's
like, that's the future, right? Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Right.
If we could, we'll talk about confidence and stable confidence, but like that's the thing that's really stuck with me that I share with my students. Like, you can't control the outcome. All you can control is like where you are in the present moment.
There are things in our lives that we can control. They happen in the present. Right? Yeah. I can't control my past because it's over, and I can't control my future because I'm not there yet. So that's clearly just like logically and conceptually, duh. But also, like, we like the idea of feeling like we're in control of things that are important to us. But just because we want to be, and it would be great if we are, doesn't mean that we actually are. The challenge with I want to control outcomes isn't that that's a bad thing or that outcomes don't matter. It's that I don't actually have control over them. So I'm always ahead of myself or behind time or ahead of time because I'm trying to control something that by definition outcomes only exist in the past and in the future. So even if I hit a putt and it literally just misses or just makes, technically it's over. It's in the past. Therefore, I can't get to it. Or, again, we can influence outcomes in the future based on what we do in the present, but we cannot control them directly.
Yeah.
And understanding that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just saying, paying attention to intention. Like, that's another one of my favorite words is intention, is, on purpose. Like, I think, the things that I want to get from you today that we're gonna love to hear is the language that we use outwardly, but also the language that we use for our self-talk, I think is massive, right?
Yeah, it matters. Language is another way. Words basically create meaning. Meaning creates interpretation to our brain as to whether this is a pursuit or an avoidance-based task, how many tasks I should be doing at once, how important they are, how valuable they are to me. It matters. Language matters greatly.
Yeah, so training that, like some application as far as like being on time. One of the things that I think we shared and I've been working on for the last several years is meditation, right? Mindfulness
training. Yeah.
Right. So talk a little bit about how that's important. Do you, and also to follow up, do you give your players or your clients, or do you try to get them to do meditation? I mean, obviously a lot of people are going to be skeptical because I understand the science behind it, but explain a little bit about how that's important to helping you focus and like being more aware of like what time you're at in your process.
Mindfulness training is another way of saying I'm strengthening the awareness muscle about how my brain operates and how I pay attention to things, right? So again, how we pay attention matters. Mindfulness is a fancy word that basically means I'm paying attention again on purpose right now to things as they are and without judgment, okay? The reason this is really important and impactful is because awareness, how we pay attention, is the first line of information processing for us. So if we are not training the first line of information processing, everything downstream becomes subject to how we are paying attention. So if we want to be a high performer and or enjoy life more, be present more often, how we pay attention to things matters greatly because that's going to be the first domino in a series of effects. How mindfulness training works is we just on purpose pay attention to things in a certain way. So if you're working with me, again, I'm not requiring it from anybody, but that would be like you wanting to be a pro golfer and like, I'm not going to practice. You're like, good luck, bud.
Right? Yeah.
On the other hand, you go, I want to be a high performer. That means I need to learn to pay attention in ways where I can notice when my priorities have shifted, when my body tells me something, when a situation has shifted, and certainly when my focus and my thoughts have shifted, right? So to do that, again, many different ways. These practices have been around for thousands of years, by the
Right.
way. And for anybody who's listening going, I'm pretty skeptical of this mindfulness stuff, I encourage you to go do a little bit of research about it. There are literally thousands of studies that are both psychological, spiritual, neurological, health-based relation that are all like the results are undeniable about what happens when we pay attention to our lives in a more mindful way. Okay. What that looks like, for example, a basic practice is just paying attention to how you feel your breath. Okay, so I'm not looking to be more comfortable. I'm not looking to even relax. I'm not looking to control my thoughts in any way. I'm only paying attention to how I might feel my breath. Now, the feeling of my breath, the physical feeling, tells me and my brain that you're present. So again, what's the most efficient way? Again, here's now your connection to your vagus nerve. Well, how do I feel what it's like to be present? Something physical, right? So our brain connects, our attentional focus can gravitate to something physical more tangibly than it can something necessarily conceptual, although it can do that. But the fastest, strongest, most survival parts of our brain orient towards sensations first more than just thoughts and concepts. This is why if you're having a panic attack, you can't talk your way out of it. You can breathe your way down from it.
That's the way I used to deal with mine.
That's exactly right. And it's not necessarily even slow your breathing or speed it up or breathe in a box or a triangle. It's just, where do you feel your breath? So you're just paying attention to, you are present. And our brain goes, well, if you're present and you're alive, therefore there must be some level of safety that probably doesn't require panic. Right? So again, it's not magic. It is us tuning into, what does it physically feel like to be connected to the moment that I'm in? Right. So that would be a basic breath-centered mindfulness practice. The deep end of the mindfulness pool is learning to just pay attention to your thoughts and feelings and sensations and doing absolutely nothing with them. And what that allows you to do is have any thought or feeling and it not have to dictate what you focus on, what you talk about, how you think, how you act, so on and so forth. So again, that's any marine life behind any glass doing whatever. Okay, fine. You know, if we're really talking about like what creates freedom for people from their inner experiences, that it can just do whatever it's going to do and you don't have to follow it in whatever direction it may or may not be going. That doesn't mean it's not happening, but that doesn't mean you have to operate on it. That's the deep end of mindfulness, where you have a separation between yourself and your inner experience, like essentially your consciousness and just your immediate sensory experience. It's a powerful place to be in, because now you can think and feel anything, and it doesn't mean it has to be disruptive.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there any apps or tools that you use or give to your players for that type of training? Because it's just a tool. It's going back to like saying relax to somebody, and like that's not helping anything. Like, what are the tools or what are the exercises? Like, we work on our swing, we work on our body, we work on our nutrition, but like, how do we really work on our mental side? Any of those that come to mind?
In my book, again, if people want to, it's called Golf Beneath the Surface. I detail 3 different and provide a script for 3 different mindfulness practices. There's no shortage of mindfulness resources around. You could be in the App Store for days trying to find one if you were looking for the perfect one. Apps, or perhaps you could even like search on any YouTube, Spotify, whatever, for a mindfulness script of any length, of any type, whatever that might be. A couple of caveats with that. If you're like never done mindfulness training before, it can be really helpful to have some type of a guide into that, whether it's a script or an app. Like, there's a reason I put it in the book. It's for those who are like, I don't even know what this is, or I haven't done it in a while, can get your feet wet. One of the caveats to that, though, is like your golf swing, think of the mindfulness training apps like a training aid. At a certain point, you got to get it out of the equation because you can't take it to the course. Right. So our mindfulness, the introduction via some type of app or something can be really helpful. But if you really want to get all the juice out of it, and really develop a mindful focus to help you be on time more often, or be more intentional with what you do and how you do it by paying attention in that way, you have to learn how to do it on your own, which means a self-guided practice. And again, it's not they're not complicated. It's just doing them on your own. It makes you more self-reliant rather than other reliant with that.
Yeah, I'll give a plug to the one I just started using. I was using another one for a long time. It's called The Way by Henry Schuckman.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really very knowledgeable guru in that practice. That it's great. Yeah, it's just like somebody just talking to you. Like I know in your book you talk about doing a body scan. Like they did kind of go through all of that, but I think the frustrating part, it's kind of like, I mean, it just goes back to learning anything, right? Learning anything new is you think you got to be perfect and you need to like clear your mind and all that. That doesn't happen, right?
Yes,
It's almost it's a tough ROI, I think, for us humans to go, am I really getting anything out of this? But I can promise you, if you're consistent with it, it's only 10 minutes a day, right? 10, 20 minutes a day.
It can be less. The minimum dosage is 6 minutes. And that's not the only way to be mindful. These are just more synchronized practices. The thing about the ROI is that the more we demand an ROI from stuff, the less invested we are in them in the present. We're always looking for, where's my return on investment in the future?
Yeah.
And then therefore we're not really in it. So we're not getting the ROI, in part because you're not really in it while you're in it. Right. So whenever people tell me like, I'm in this lesson, I'm not getting better, I'm like, that's because you're trying to figure out how much better you're getting. You're not actually in the thing.
Oh, I love that.
The mindful analogy is, are you doing the dishes or are you doing the dishes to get them done? Right.
You're making my head explode right now.
Two different ways. Now again, you might go, well, Raymond, this is kind of hokey. But again, think about all the best rounds of golf you've ever played. Have you been playing them to get them over with? Have you been playing them to avoid a bunch of things? Have you been playing them for a return on investment? Or were you just trying to do it as well as you could and you were in it while it was happening without needing to know what the end result was going to be? Yeah. Of course, you were after the best end result, but you didn't feel the need to require anything at the end of it. That opens the door for you to be present more often. So everyone has experienced it in some way, somewhere in their life, where they let go of this need for an ROI, and that gets them invested in what they're doing instead of just passing time trying to get to the next thing.
I mean, how many times have we heard the stories of like Tiger, Ben Hogan, all these great players that have like literally blacked out?
Yeah.
You know, and we use that term now, like when you're on a heater.
The term is incorrect, but what it means is I was so into something while it was happening that my brain was not forming a timeline of events that I could go necessarily back and recall in order. It's rare because you got to really be in it, but it is possible. It's not your brain blacking out. It's, I'm so into this moment that I don't feel the need to record the last one in the same way or project the next one that isn't even here yet.
Yeah.
It's a cool spot.
It makes me think of just basically reverse engineering the problem in all parts of what we do.
Right.
Like, don't try so hard and you'll do better. You know, it's just all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I might point out very quickly, mindfulness practice is not about being good at mindfulness or being perfect or a return on investment. It's just about paying attention in a different way. And when we do that, our capacity to pay attention in that way in other places in our lives expands. And then we get the benefits of being able to pay attention in that way.
Yeah, I love that. It's like we're building that muscle, especially in this day and age with, you know, social media and all the distractions. And I'm caught up in the TikTok and the Instagram vortex, you know, during the day. We're taking all this information is like how much time do you take to yourself? 10, 15, 20 minutes where you're literally just focusing on none of that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be helpful.
It might also be important to to pull on that thread that you put there. Like, how much of our day do we actually spend paying attention on purpose to things right now as they are? Yeah. Conversely, or mindlessly. Mindlessly is it's very reactive, passive focus. And I'm just like, again, I'm mindlessly scrolling through something. Again, when you do that a lot, you are training your brain to focus in that way, and then don't be surprised if that also follows you to the golf course, right? So needless to say, if you only ate candy, you wouldn't be surprised if the rest of your day, the energy levels were commensurate with a diet filled with candy versus I'm eating foods with more stable energy sources that are better for me. So this is, again, it's kind of a diet of how we pay attention. That, again, we're not going to do it 24/7, but it is pretty valuable in some certain places.
Yeah. All right. So I've got, again, so many notes here. I can go in a lot of different directions. I'm trying to stay on task myself, which never tends to happen. Kind of go on tangents. But I mean, your book is all built around, and your philosophy seems to be built around, swinging freely, right? And that's obviously a product of all the stuff that you teach and how we get our minds in the right place and think about it. But I think that goes back to, building what you call, actual real confidence, right? It's like,
I call it stable confidence.
Stable confidence. Sorry, yeah, stable confidence. So talk about you can kind of go into like your entire philosophy, but like to build stable confidence so we can swing freely or get our players to be in that mode.
Well, I would just say this. I've never met anybody who says I play worse playing freely. Most people that come to me are saying I'm not playing freely enough, often enough to pursue the things that are important to me. Okay. So then where does freedom come from? Well, it's got to come from me if it's going to be consistent enough, often enough, and especially under pressure, because the things that we typically attach our confidence to, it's not that they're bad or that they can't create confidence. They can't do it in stable ways. For example, most golfers feel more confident when they hit a bunch of really good golf shots. The problem is that is a temporary state because every golfer hits a crappy golf shot from time to time, even in a range session, even in a low stakes setting, right? So if I've attached my confidence to outcomes, which you had pointed out before, I cannot control, my confidence therefore is going to be unstable, even if it seemed stable at times in my life. So for example, let's say you're a teenage rock star golfer, you win everything that you play and everyone tells you how wonderful you are. It's going to feel like confidence. The problem is it's not stable because at some point that bottom's going to fall out on that. Okay. And I don't mean that you're going to suck at golf. I mean, it's going to get harder and also everyone else is going to get good. People don't win more as their career, as they reach higher levels of golf. They win less, even the best, right? So we typically attach our confidence to things like outcomes, our thoughts and feelings, which we've already mentioned. Just because you have them doesn't mean that they are, but we often go, oh, if you think this way, that's a confident thought, or that's not a confident thought, or this is what confidence feels like and what it doesn't. We attach it to other people's opinions. We attach it to our projections of the future. We attach it to our memories and interpretations of the past. All of these things, again, we wouldn't say are bad sources of confidence, but they are by definition unstable. Right. And so if my confidence is built on these, the question becomes, what happens when their stability or whatever lack of stability they have is unavailable to me? So if we're defining stable confidence is self-given permission to perform freely without a guarantee, meaning I have decided I'm going to do this freely for the reasons that are important to me, not leaving it up to anything else that tell me how to think and feel and so on and so forth. So I'm playing a really difficult tee shot. I'm going to play it freely because I want to, and that's in my best interest, not because I feel like it's going to definitely work out in my favor, which I don't actually know, which we might notice the feeling of trust, which is just another layer of feeling certainty about the future, really unstable place for confidence because future is always unknown, right? Yeah. So building stable confidence for us means it's building it on more stable foundations. And the two most stable foundations for confidence are, one, being present more often, hence being on time, and two, acceptance. Acceptance is us. Acceptance is the hard one for us, but I would even make the argument that if your level of acceptance is high enough, you don't even have to worry about being present because you'll be funneled there anyway. What acceptance doesn't mean is that I don't care about outcomes or my experience. It doesn't mean that I'm not motivated to do well. It doesn't mean that I don't care. It doesn't mean I'm settling for less. And it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily comfortable or certain, so on and so forth. It means I'm willing to take on all that this experience might include. The reason this is stable confidence is not because I think it is, as Raymond Prior, it's because of how our brain works. So anything that I tell myself is unacceptable, my brain will perceive as a threat. And then therefore it will meet with anxiety. So if I go, hitting a ball out of bounds is absolutely unacceptable, my brain is designed to go, we will do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. Therefore, here comes a bunch of anxiety trying to get you to worry about it before it's even happened. And then here comes, I can't see anything but out of bounds and all the thoughts that come with it. And then also the priority becomes, don't play a shot in a place you don't want to, which means I'm not actually pursuing what's in front of me when it's happening. I'm actively trying to avoid something that is in my future, maybe.
Yeah.
So all that's being said is, when we leave our confidence in the hands of external things, we are creating a series of things that are and are not acceptable, that may or may not be part of the experience. In which case, then, if they are on the unacceptable list and they're part of the experience, let's say it's, I'm feeling uncomfortable, or I have a history with this hole that has not gone well and I cannot accept that playing out again in my future, what I'm asking my brain to do is avoid all of those unacceptable things and pursue them at the same time. But our brain is designed to attend to what is unacceptable first. And our most viable mechanism for our brain to avoid the things that we say are unacceptable is anxiety.
Yeah,
Right?
I call that scar tissue, right? It's like the past experiences like tend to drive our future decisions, and that's what kills us.
Scar tissue is another way of saying I have a memory in my past or an experience in my past that I am trying to avoid at all costs playing out in my future. And again, it's not that everyone doesn't have a scratchy past and a painful past with anything in their life. Pick any part of your life, there's going to be some shitty memories in it, pardon my language.
No,
but the more I go, I cannot let the pain from my past exist in my future. That is then, now I'm doing the thing in my present, trying to avoid my past and my future. And of course, it's going to make it more difficult for us to, by definition, that is not freedom. Right? Freedom is an absence of rules, not an imposition of rules. So if the rule is that past is unacceptable to play out in my future, my brain's going to be following that task list. The problem is it is entirely counterproductive to what I'm actually trying to do right now.
Yeah, so what I hear you saying in layman's terms is like, it's the more we can be okay with failure, the more chance we have of not failing, right? And the better chance we have of performing because of our, I guess, being okay with that kind of outcome and keep getting up and keep trying, right? I mean, that's what we tell our kids all the time is like, well, okay, you're going to fail a lot. Like, let's keep getting in there. Let's keep signing up.
Yeah, what I would say is, based on how our brain is designed, the more we try to avoid things that we don't want to happen, the less freedom we have to pursue the things that we do want to happen. And the worse our experience gets because we're not really present in it and we're doing it out of anxiety, frustration, and all these things that if I told you this is what golf is, you would be like, well, I don't want to do that anyway.
Right.
So to your point, and again, it's not because of some positive or negative thinking. It's basically what I'm asking my brain to do while I'm actually playing. So stable confidence is, I'm going to do this freely and I'm willing to accept all that this situation might include. And I'm going to do that without a guarantee that it's going to go the way that I want it to. So again, that doesn't mean I would be okay with it. It just means I'm willing to perhaps live with it. Then if you really get into like a lot of my work with people, it's like, hold on a second. Why is it that is on the unacceptable list? Right. So again, painful experiences, our brain's default response is to try to avoid them at all costs in our future. It's a super effective survival mechanism. You will always feel more protected. The problem is it's going to keep you from pursuing what it is that is meaningful to us, right? So it's a bit of a catch-22, but if you understand how our brain works a little bit, to your point, and we pay attention in a different way, we can see that we can put our confidence in places that are far more stable and they're internally driven more than externally driven, which again, if you've hit a bunch of shots and you're like, man, I just feel like I can't miss and I'm super certain I'm going to play well, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is it's not available to us very often. Therefore, I need something that's going to be more stable if I'm going to try to enjoy the game more, get better at it over time, and certainly perform under pressure.
Yeah, I love that. It makes perfect sense. As far as like training our thoughts, I love the visual that you talk about in the book, the A shape. And we can do this because we are on video. A shape versus the V shape, right?
Yep.
So it's like the difference between adding constriction versus creating space.
That's right.
right?
So
I mean, that's basically everything, isn't it?
look, constriction and space are common threads between many different avenues for humans. For example, the golf swing. Very hard to hit a golf ball if you don't create enough space to move. Like you got to create space to move into,
Yeah.
right? If it's too constricted, there's not enough room. So if you can move in it, it's not going to be fast enough or efficient enough. The same works for us psychologically. If we don't have enough space to actually be present, we're in constriction. And constriction is a survival mechanism for us. So if you were being attacked by a bear, you would tuck your arms and legs in your head, and you would make them very tense because that would, in theory, protect your vital organs and your head. You might survive the experience, or at least, you might lose a limb, but again, you might live. Well, emotional constriction is us trying to avoid being threatened or experiencing things that we deem threatening. So A-shaped thinking, it's not that it's negative, it's constricting. The way we think about things creates either space or constriction. Constriction comes from us thinking about things in two primary ways. First is we think of them in absolutes. So that's I have to, I need to, I must, it has to go this way, or don't let it go that way. So don't hit it left is not a negative thought. It's a constricting thought, right? And it's creating an avoidance-based task for my brain to attend to, right? So again, if I told you you're on the first tee, you must not you must not miss the first fairway, versus if I told you, love to hit the first fairway, let's see how it goes. Two totally different feelings. One is this feeling of space and freedom to operate. The other is a constricting. Again, it's not negative, it's constricting, it's tight. Then at the bottom of an A-shaped thought, or it might say the second half of it, is kind of the conclusion that we would make about whether that thing goes the way we think it must or must not. In an A-shaped thought, again, a constricting and anxiety creating thought, we are typically making conclusions about the future, an if-then. So if I miss the first fairway, and in a way that is some combination of long-term, widespread, and personal. For example, I must hit the first fairway or I'm just not going to play well today. I get that a lot from people.
Sure.
It's not a negative thought. It's a thought that is taking what is the actual parameters and making them much smaller, and holding your future hostage to it.
Yeah, it's one shot out of the whole round.
That's exactly right. So I'm taking a single shot and I am now attaching my entire experience the day or my entire performance to it. Or players will tell me, I missed a whatever putt in the first round. Like, I'm just not putting well today. So you have taken a single event that is short term and very specific, that putt on that hole and that break and whatever, and you have applied it to a bunch of things that it's not actually applied to. And then, of course, every golfer will be able to relate to. We often take things personally. So I hit a poor shot that I must not ever hit, and that means I'm a bad golfer. Or a classic example, I must be perfect in order to be successful. So I've attached my long-term future of whether I am successful or not to whether I am perfect or not, which, again, by definition, perfection has no margin for error. So it's not a negative thought. It's very constricting. Where stable confidence comes from is us thinking about things in ways that are more spacious and more acceptable. Space comes from thinking about things as preferences. I would love to play well today, and I'm going to try to do that. Or I would love to hit this first fairway. Or even I would prefer not to be in the rough, but that is a part of the experience. So a preference and a need are met very differently by our brain. Needs are met with avoidance-based motivation. Preferences are met with pursuit-based motivation. Hence, the space to go get stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Then the bottom or the second half of a V-shaped thought is I'm only attaching to that event what's actually attached to it. So I missed the first fairway. It's not indicative of my entire round. It doesn't mean I'm playing like crap or my driver's gone awry, or that I'm a bad golfer. It just means I missed the first fairway. Period, end of sentence, right? So if you're getting really technical with these terms, the bottom of a A-shaped thought is like what's called a pessimistic explanatory style.
Yeah.
Pessimism is not glass half full or half empty. It's why we see it half full or half empty. If I told you you have adversity and it's now you have explained it to yourself that it is a very long-term, very widespread, very personal adversity, that glass is going to be half empty. Versus if I told you you got some adversity or some challenge ahead of you, and it's only as long-term, only as widespread, and only as personal, which really it isn't, as it actually is, basically now that glass is going to look more half full. So our explanatory style is why we would make a mountain out of a molehill when it's just a molehill, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, golf is a significant challenge with varieties of different, mountains and molehills. Very rarely are they as mountainous as we explain them to ourselves. So learning to think in more V-shaped ways, which again is not me thinking positively or fluffing things up. It's actually seeing things as they are rather than throwing some projections on them and constrictions that don't really exist. There's a lot of freedom there.
So that leads us in, do you advocate self-talk at all? Like, is there a sort of training system of like how to talk to yourself? Or is it constructive to like get on yourself sometimes, right? It's like, I think we're as tour players, I'm thinking of my tour players out there, they're by themselves, or with a caddy, or they're by themselves. Like, they're their own sort of mobile unit, so they're having to talk to themselves, a certain way. Is there any truth to that?
Well, as a human being, we are always having a conversation with ourselves, whether we are aware of it or not. So it's an inner monologue. It's really an inner dialogue because there is a back and forth with it.
Yeah.
Now, our inner dialogue, the words and the actual conversation we have with ourselves, what's really important, which I try to lay out in the book as it relates to A-shaped and V-shaped thoughts, in this case, beliefs, that dialogue is going to follow what those core beliefs are. So if I give you the core belief, anything less than perfection is unacceptable, and if you produce anything less than that, you are wasting your time. Your inner dialogue is going to sound very different than if your core belief is, this is a worthwhile pursuit for me. I'm going to try to do it as well as I can, and I'm going to be willing to see how far it can take me. Okay. Now, you're going to be trying to hold yourself accountable with the former, but it's probably going to come out of very harsh, very exacting inner dialogue that you're going to get frustrated very quickly, and so on and so forth. So it is important for us to tune into our inner dialogue, but the key is what's actually behind this conversation here. I've got no problem with any player that I work with being like, hey, bud, you can do better, or hey, girl, you need to refocus and get on what's necessary. But this, you're terrible, whatever. It's not, I would tell them, hey, you need to think positively and be nice to yourself. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
And then you got to do a little bit of exploration. Is why is it that I feel the need to talk to myself this way? And usually there's some A-shaped thought or thoughts or beliefs behind it that, of course, you're talking to yourself that way.
So basically, you've built that in before you show up, right?
If
that's where guys like you come in.
That's right.
To help them to change their beliefs or change their perceptions.
To at least explore them and perhaps change them. Look, we all have beliefs that we learn early that we discard, right? So the example I use in the book is most people, at least those reading this in the Western world, grew up believing in Santa Claus. Very few people as adults still believe in Santa Claus, right? So that doesn't mean because you grew up believing something or learned to believe something that it's true. Just because a lot of people believe it doesn't make it true. Just because it was true in the past doesn't mean it's true now. So it is very important for us to explore and be very skeptical, not cynical. Cynical is there's nothing you could say to sway me. Skeptical is prove it. Show me why, right? It's very important for us to be skeptical of our own beliefs because that's the only way we can get them oriented toward truth. Or maybe not the only way, but the most efficient, self-driven way to do so. And the thing about stable confidence is it's not built on fluff. Like anytime I catch a player, oh, I'm so great, everything's going to go my way. I'm like, this doesn't sound credible, dude. Time out a second. What's actually true? So what you notice, the research shows us is that people who are really stable confidence, they're operating around truth. They're not really interested in fluff. They're also not interested in crushing themselves simply because that's going to motivate me to do better, because that may or may not be true.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you call the trap loop,
possibly.
Loop. Yeah, it's like that. I thought that was a cool way to think about. It's not, like you said, it's not just negative thinking, right? It's just owning what you're thinking and then being able to turn that into something that's going to be tangible to help us perform.
Yeah, you might consider, instead of whether this is a positive or negative thought, which, by the way, our brain does not positivity and negativity in thinking is a subjective valence from our conscious mind and our perceptions. Our brain does not think in positive and negative. It thinks in pursuit or avoidance-based tasks, right? So it is important for us to tune into our thoughts, and instead of labeling them as positive or negative, good or bad, maybe instead asking, are these thoughts true? Are they a reflection of reality? And if they are or aren't, are they beneficial to me? So we're assessing them more for factual nature and utility, not does it seem like it's doing something? Is it actually? And so when we start to do that, again, imagine you believe in Santa Claus. You don't just stop believing in Santa Claus because someone says it. You start questioning and start looking for, well, what's the truth? And then to do that, you start looking for evidence to support one idea or the other. And then you let the evidence tell you what's true. And then also you would ask, well, what would my life be like as an adult if I still genuinely believed in Santa Claus? And it probably wouldn't be that good. Like, elf is not what it would really look like for people. In which case, then nobody's really believing in Santa Claus because, one, it's not true, and two, it wouldn't benefit your life. That's a far more efficient means for us to start to change the way we see things and have perspective changes and paradigm changes than just trying to smother myself with positive talk or, by the way, crush myself with a bunch of criticism that isn't true and isn't helping either.
I love that. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes you think, being whatever age you are, it's like, okay. One of my favorite quotes is don't pull it up here. Don't believe everything you think.
Don't believe everything you think.
I love that. I
just
think I heard Tim Ferriss say that.
Yeah. So just because we have a thought or the feelings associated with it does not make it true.
Yeah, be skeptical.
By the way, and be skeptical of our beliefs too. So beliefs are learned. We're not born with beliefs. We learn them. And just because we learn them doesn't necessarily mean that they are correct. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that they're beneficial to us. So if we examine them, get skeptical about them, and seek evidence, we can oftentimes shift. One of the things that makes changing beliefs difficult for us is that our brain is geared toward what we call confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is we have this propensity as humans to want to see the world in the way that we already see it rather than be open to evidence of the contrary. It feels good for us to be correct in the immediate than it is to get it right, which means being actually correct. So if you want to get around confirmation bias, what that means is you have to start questioning what you think and perhaps giving other ideas and other beliefs the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's why, debate in our instruction circles, and I'm sure in your circles as well, has been, not as heated as it used to be, but everybody they just want to be right because they want to confirm what they're teaching or what they're sharing with their players, and as opposed to going, all right, let me look at it from both sides.
Yeah,
and let's do some research.
Or look at it from an open-minded point of view. One of the things that I think does not benefit instructors or students in the golf world is that instructors and even people in my field, we start to personally identify with something as if we own it or invented it, or if people do it, that validates me as an instructor. So then now when I've become personally attached to something, now I get defensive about it. And it's not you, it's a thing. And that thing is probably really valuable in some places, maybe not very valuable in others. It has utility here, not there. Maybe it's correct here, but not there. There's a lot of nuance and gray area and stuff. But when we personally identify stuff, what we often tend to do is we tend to overgeneralize. Like, everybody needs to swing the club this way. No, they don't.
Nope.
Right? Everyone needs to think this way. Also, no, they don't. Right? And then what happens is when people produce ideas or question it, we get defensive about it because what we're not really defending is the idea. We're defending the fact that we are attached to it. So
it's
that's something
for
that's exactly right. I've attached my ego to it, and now it's not really about the thing, it's about me. And unfortunately in all industries, but golf particularly, there's a couple of instances around that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really drew me to your information and just listening to how you talk and the language that you use is you talk a lot about the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And that's really why I started this podcast, was to get information and have smart people on like you that are going to give us another perspective. Can you speak a little bit on maybe your background going, coming up through your childhood and into college. You went to West Virginia, is that right?
Well, I went to
Farm-
West Virginia was one of the many graduate schools.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had a lot.
You're a West Virginia boy, if
I am. Yeah.
correctly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on. I
So
grew up. Yeah, I grew up outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, which close enough to the city where you commute every day for school and work for my parents and whatnot. I played soccer growing up. I was a pretty skilled player. If I'd known what I know now, it probably would have taken me a little
bit had you
farther.
As a coach.
Yeah. By the time my body and injuries were catching up with me, I was becoming very curious as to why players that are objectively more skilled than others do not outperform them as often as they quote unquote should. And starting to understand that there's a whole lot more toward, like you said, coaches always telling me growing up, you got to focus, and never even questioning, like, what does that even mean?
Sure.
Or on what? Like, technically speaking, we are always focused. It's a matter of on what and when, WHEN. Or you got to be confident, and me not, like, how are you defining confident? Like, does that come from? Like, all of those things. And I only knew, like, if you play well, then you should be confident. If you don't, then you shouldn't. And like all these things. And starting to really start to ask some questions and realizing that anything we do, there's a domino effect. And at the beginning of that domino effect is our psychology. So it's psychology first, neurology second. Not my opinion. It's how our brain and body work. Then there's a physiological interaction. And then there's a down the line. There's my skills and capacities, my ability to articulate, the equipment I'm using, the strategies I'm taking in. There's 1,000 things in this domino effect. But at the front, every single time, is my psychology. And for those of you who go, that's not true, that's your psychology in the front making a conclusion before it happens, right? Okay. So all that being said, well, if that's the first domino, man, it must be really important for us to take care of that thing in a certain way. So many, many years of school later to study psychology, the practice of counseling and psychological practice, like the skills involved with being good at that, being able to work with a human being, but then also the psychological knowledge behind that, a lot of neuroscience training behind it, and a lot of sleep science training behind that. Those are kind of my three areas: performance psychology, neuroscience, and sleep science.
Yeah.
All with the intention of how do we take care of this first and second domino as best we can, so that, like, I often tell the swing coaches, sometimes they find me threatening, and I just want to be like, hey guys, I just want you to know, or girls, I'm trying to do my job, take care of these first two dominoes so that you can go do your job and it's better. Because if this person plays in a certain way and then shows up to a lesson with you or whatever, and they are in certain psychological states versus not, it's a waste of your time and a waste of their time. I'm sure you've given some lessons where someone has been so anxious, the hour was not spent learning the golf swing, it was trying to work through anxiety.
Versus, I call it a cat kicking world. Like, you don't know what happened to them that day. They're going through a tough time, family, health, whatever, and then we're up against a brick wall. They're closed-minded already.
Right. Yeah. That's right. And they're in a state that is not receptive to learning. That is just a psychological state and a neurological composition that is protection first, right? Versus someone comes in with a growth mindset, a willingness to accept feedback and information, and an acceptance of this might get a little bit worse before it gets better. Those are the lessons that are most effective, not just for you to be able to teach, but for them to be able to learn. Oh, and by the way, they're really enjoyable. Right. So again, for me, my job is, can I help people understand and take care of their first two dominoes so that the rest of what they do is at least that domino is stacked more in their favor for, one, getting better over time, two, performing under pressure, and three, and I don't put this third like it's last, but enjoying their experiences more. Because I don't know, we live in a world where most of us live with enough privilege where there's not really a lot of point to doing something if it's going to be a miserable experience.
Yeah. When did you know you wanted to be, like, go towards sport? I know you have more clients than just
I work in
sports.
I work in 3.5 or 4 major buckets. Sport is
talk
one
about
of
that.
Yeah. Sport is one of them, and golfers pick up part of that. But I work with athletes in most sports. The other is like corporate consulting. So I don't do, like, I'm not consulting them on their finances or business strategies. It's basically performance psychology as it would be for sport, but just in the corporate world. They call it executive coaching or something of that nature. And do similar trainings. Like, for example, many corporations this last year, I just did workshops on like what is a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and how does that look in a corporate setting versus just like an academic setting or something, right? Another area would be like performing artists, so that's actors and
music.
actresses, singer-songwriters, producers, writers, stage performers, a lot of comedians,
Oh,
those
wow.
types of things.
Okay, I
Yeah,
didn't
where
know
basically
that.
like you're
Yeah.
performing. It's a very very high pressure environments. So again, my specialty, and by specialty I mean kind of where I have moved toward, is like high stakes performance. So elite sport, the corporate world, many millions of dollars at stake, sometimes geopolitical influence too. Performing artists, and then also some I can't give a ton of information about, but like our elite military forces
wow.
would also be in that one.
Yeah, that's so cool. So a couple other topics here, and then we're going to get into a couple of case studies or just
Sure.
questions about my students.
Sure.
Air quotes. Motivation and goal setting, right? It's like, I mean, I've been, sort of trained, or, you go through these programs when you're coming up and you're trying to be successful, whatever that means. Another subject, to set goals, right? Write them down. I always, wrote my goals down. I started journaling at a young age. How effective do you think that is, and do you believe in any of that?
Well, it's not whether I believe in it. I can tell you what the research shows us about it. Yeah.
Thank you. That's what I meant.
Okay, so quick thing about motivation is oftentimes people describe people as motivated or unmotivated or not. It's not how it works. Everybody is motivated. It's a matter of what it is that you're motivated to move toward or move away from. So getting a bunch of goals down on paper is going to create a dopamine spike in your brain. It's going to feel good because you're going to look on paper and it's going to feel good to think about doing that and achieving that. Okay, nothing wrong with it. The problem is it doesn't count for anything. You and I could sit down, we could write down a bunch of goals, and it's not going to matter. Now, there is some value to knowing where you want to go and what you want to do, because it's going to give you some information about what that's going to require, likely. Okay. One of the things that's important to understand about motivation for us is we as humans are motivated in two ways: extrinsically and intrinsically. Extrinsically is your sticks and carrots. So there's a lot of stuff that you don't want to do that if I give you enough money, you're going to be motivated to do it, right? There's also stuff that you really enjoy doing that if I gave you a adverse consequence, you would be unmotivated or less motivated to
pleasure versus pain. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So that's real, right? So for example, I've never met a golfer who's playing professionally that says they aren't motivated to some degree by money, some more than others, right? Or, for example, in our modern world, it's like things like people's opinions, right?
Sure.
Now, there's nothing wrong with extrinsic motivators. The issue is how they operate in our brain, which is they are very short-lived, and the more I use them, the more I need of them. So if I pay you $5 to give a golf lesson, at some point in your life, that was worth it to you. If I gave you $5 to give a golf lesson now, you probably think twice about whether that's worth your time. Right? Unless the experience itself was intrinsically motivating enough for you, meaning there was something about it that was worth it to you and or enjoyable enough that you would want to do it anyway.
Gotcha.
So that's intrinsic motivation. A rough analogy is that extrinsic motivators, money, punishment, etc., are like fireworks. They burn hot, but they burn out fast. Intrinsic motivation, the things of like, why would I do something without anything else attached to it? Praise, money, wins and losses, scores, etc. Like those types of things, that's intrinsic motivation, essentially stuff that I would do because I want to do it for no other reason. And yes, there's some other things that might be attached to it, but I would do it anyway. What's really important for us to kind of tune into is what the research shows us over and over and over again, is that people who are more intrinsically motivated, meaning I would do this thing for free as long as I could cover all my whatever, they have longer, healthier, and higher performing careers. Well, why would that be? Well, why? Because doing the thing is enough for them.
The joy, right? Is that
right?
be into that? Yeah.
That's exactly right. So, and by the way, that doesn't necessarily mean it's easy all the time.
Right.
It doesn't mean it doesn't come with uncertainty and discomfort or that there isn't failure involved, but they would go, if I could do anything right now, I would be doing this, right? Also, what we see is when we are intrinsically motivated, I want to do this, way easier for us to be present because the experience itself draws our focus in. Conversely, those who are more extrinsically motivated, that is, I'm doing this because I want attention, praise, to avoid criticism, prove to other people, make money. Again, nothing wrong with making money and earning, but if those are the primary motivators for me, what we see is it's way harder for people to be present because they're always looking for their ROI. Where's my return on investment?
Yeah.
And is it going to match what I think it should be? Also, they have less long careers because the thing itself isn't sustaining to you. And at a certain point, even if you make a ton, it's not enough to make it worth your time, right? They are significantly more likely to experience psychological and physical injury, and their careers are lower performing. And the reason is they're not into the thing in a way that promotes higher performance over time because they need a return on investment for it. And without that return on investment, they're not in it enough to get better over time. And it's very hard for them to be present under pressure because there's always the, what is this going to cash out for me as at the end for one way or another. So if we're really looking to increase our intrinsic motivation, the most efficient way for us to do that in a very practical way is to ask ourselves, one, what makes this worth it for me without all the extra stuff? And the other way would be start removing all the other stuff. Now, if you're making a living giving golf lessons, that might not be a viable option for you, but I'm going to guess that for most people, you can do something, and yes, there are some extrinsic motivators attached to it, but when we connect far more with what is it about this thing and actually doing it that make it worthwhile to me, valuable to me, a passion for me, that's what draws in our intrinsic motivation. So most golf instructors that I know that just love it, and by the way, many of them are significantly wealthy. Well, what is it that you really love about your job? Very few of them tell me it's because I make a very wealthy living. Most of them tell me I love interacting with other people.
Yeah.
I love learning. I love teaching. I love being outside. I love problem solving.
Yeah, that's
Again,
that,
something
that,
that actually
kind of describes all
can,
of the,
right? Something that can actually be problem solved.
Yeah.
All of those things, or let's say like I really love when people say I really love playing golf, and I go, what do you love about it? Most people who are more intrinsically motivated go, I like that there's a challenge in it. I like hitting a really good golf shot, or I like the fact that when you play a golf course, technically it's not ever the same. I like the idea of trying to outduel somebody, whatever that might be. Very few of them tell me it better have a certain score on the end of it. Now, that's nice, but if it has to have a certain score on the other side of it, that's just, again, my extrinsic motivation. It's a future thing that I can't control. And if you do that over and over again, there's always going to be a layer of frustration and anxiety that is self-imposed upon it that makes the experience more sour than if it was just intrinsic. All right, so again, I don't want to pretend that outcomes don't matter and that bottom lines don't matter and that there aren't consequences that are external to our performance and the things that we do. But when they are the only or the primary means of motivating for us, essentially I'm trying to heat my house and cook my food with fireworks. Really hard to do. Versus intrinsic motivation, which is more like a bonfire. That thing burns. You can heat your house. You can cook your food. You can do all kinds of stuff with that for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's such like it makes you think backwards, right? Like that's a product. The outcome or the winning the tournament or the score is all just a product, and it kind of leads me into my first case study here.
There you go.
And I hope I do a good job of articulating the conversation that we had. And this is a really great student of mine. He's a mini tour player. I teach a bunch of mini tour guys that are trying to make the tour. And it made me think a little bit about your story in the book where your LPGA player was putting so much pressure on Q School. But I think it brings us back to now the way the rules in the tour, and they're shrinking fields, and there's a lot.
The margins are getting narrower.
100%. And even with my question is, this young man is playing a lot of Mondays, right? The qualifiers. And it made me think of when you were talking about that is, and I try to tell people this, again, it's me telling them something that I don't really know the details of like how to really get them to do it. It's like you can't show up to to a Monday qualifier and they know the number they have to shoot pretty much. Not always, right? But you don't shoot 64 showing up saying, I'm going to shoot 64, right? You showed up there being in the mindset of like, let's hit this first shot in the fairway and let's kind of keep, plodding along. So this young man, I'm not going to mention his name, even though he was very nice. He's like, you can tell my name on the air, but I'm not going to do it. I love this kid, super talented. He's gotten like 4 or 5 Mondays in a row where he'll get to 5, 6 under, and then he starts to kind of look at the outcome. Right? It's like, okay, I'm here, and he starts to get nervous and starts to have some anxiety, a lot of anxiety, and starts to miss a short putt or make one bad swing coming down the stretch, and he shoots 4 and misses by a shot, and he actually the specific situation that he called me afterwards because he was pretty tore up, and I understand is he was in a 6-for-2 playoff to get into a Corn Ferry event, and he missed a really easy chip shot because one, he said, I was worried about being embarrassed, and I don't know what that means. Like, exactly, there's a deeper element to that, and that's where I want you to come in. I was embarrassed if I didn't make this easy chip shot and get through because I think the expectation of whoever his could be a belief system or whatever. And also, it almost makes you think about what Tommy Fleetwood's gone through a little bit at a higher level of always coming in second a lot of times and then choking at the end or whatever you want to call it. So how would you handle that as a client?
There's some layers to this tiramisu.
Yes, let's go. This is what I've been here for.
Okay, so on if we're just getting to if we're looking at things at a fundamental brain level, the level of acceptance for the possibility of what he doesn't want to happen is too low. It's not that he's thinking negatively. It's that when he gets into a situation where there's a risk that what he doesn't want to happen, which has happened in his past, may again play out in his future, the priority shifts to don't let that happen again, or don't let something play out again. So there's just a to-do list in his brain that is don't get embarrassed, don't screw this up, don't miss again by 1. I'm 6 under through 12 holes. Don't screw this up. So it's just don't. Again, not negative thoughts. Avoiding space task, avoiding space task, avoiding space task, which has shifted the priority from go pursue what you want to try to avoid all that you don't. Okay, so that's what's playing out in real time. Now, the questions for him would be like, okay, well, what is it that's keeping you from accepting that risk? Because that's what you signed up for when you went to a Monday. Also, one question I would ask him, again, it's his psychology. It'd be worth exploring. Is like, what is it that makes you think that trying and failing in any situation is worthy of embarrassment? Like, again, subjective from Raymond, I would consider that honorable. Or why does it need to be judged at all? Why can't it just be what it is? I tried and it came up short and I learned this, and this from it. Now I can go do this again. So a couple of things that he can lean into there. Then you might also go, hold on a second. Are we trained? Like, where and when did your priorities start to shift in that way? That's where our mindful awareness comes in. Because if my priorities shift on hole 12 and then I play the next 4 holes just trying not to lose my 6 under and hope that's enough to get me through, of course, you're going to be in the situation you're in. I have to pay attention to where that shift happens so that then I can course correct. And again, there's a variety of different skills you can do there, but the psychological foundation is, what is it that's making all the things I'm telling myself I can't experience on the unacceptable list, which is keeping you from doing the thing freely? And then when I notice that shift, what do I have? And there's a variety of different skills in my book that, come.
Would that be where you'd focus on the breath or shift the focus to something like that? But you got to recognize where they're at, right? Like that's what I'm hearing from you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
But it's like, and I'm thinking about what I told him. Again, stayed in the Holiday Inn Express last night, trying to be a sports psychologist. I'm like, dude, you're right there. Like, and I keep telling him it's not a skill problem. Keep putting yourself in that position. We're going to get over the hump. And I did ask a couple of those questions. Like, all right, what did you feel like under that situation? And he did mention that, a couple of things where he got nervous, his hands were shaking.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, cool. You got to recognize that, but like, I don't know how to get him over that. So
yeah, it wouldn't be don't feel nervous. It's
right.
You have to notice when you're nervous, and particularly when it turns to anxiety. Again, anxiety, don't let this happen in the future. It's worry about the future. So I'm 6 under through 12, and now I'm worried that I'm going to lose. I've been playing great. I worry that I'm going to lose strokes on the way in. Again, hasn't happened yet, so I'm worrying about something that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And then there's got to be a way for him. So yes, I need to get to my breath to be present, but I also need to, in one way or another, I have to up my level of acceptance. Right. So, for example, I might ask him, if I was in that moment with him, like, what is it you're hoping to gain from trying to avoid all of this stuff right now and worrying about whether it's going to be enough? And he would probably say something along the lines of, I'm hoping that will get me to where I want and avoid the things I don't. Cool. Then I might also ask him, you've seen this play out before. What are you actually going to get? And it's probably not that. Then I might ask him the question, what would you do and how would you do it if you were just going to try to pursue what you wanted without trying to protect yourself from all the things that you have on this list? Which just starts to shape a little bit, what does this look like if I actually did it in a way that is in my best interest, in a pursuit-based, starting right now kind of way that you've already been doing for 12 holes and actually just finishing like that. But oftentimes we get into those situations and we feel a certain way. And then we go, I must not screw this up. Don't embarrass yourself. You have missed so many Monday qualifiers, which, by the way, everybody who's playing Monday qualifiers misses Monday qualifiers by one a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I must not let that happen again, so on and so forth. So what you can just see is it's just A-shaped shot, A-shaped thought, A-shaped thought, A-shaped thought, creating avoidance-based task, avoidance-based task. So in other words, it's not, hey, bud, it's going to be great. Don't worry about it. It's, you need to up your level of acceptance for what you don't want to happen so you have more runway to pursue what you do. And then we might attach a really big, let's go see what happens on the end of it, rather than a, it's going to be certain. So when we try to assure certainty, our brain's going to go future more because it's looking for certainty. The problem is there isn't any in the future. So when we're willing to see what happens instead, in my field, we call this an open-ended future, then we have room to kind of move into, again, space to move into the future starting now rather than trying to get there too soon. So just a couple of things to consider. But the big part is like, what is it that is keeping you so resistant to some of the risk that is actually involved with this? Now, if he's saying, well, it sucks to go to a Monday, pay that money, play that, and come up short, like, that's true. Then the question is that a risk you're willing to take? So if you're not, you will try to avoid it the whole time. So the key is, what are the things that I typically avoid? And then also asking the question, am I willing to accept that risk that it might happen again?
Love it. That's so good. That's so good. So what are some of the examples that you might share of maybe a conversation you would have with some of your tour players, or maybe common problems that you hear? It's probably, and I'm guessing it's similar to like the average golfer or the mini tour player, right? I mean, if you could share any of that.
They're all very similar. So the example you just gave is the same as any other player I work with. It just plays out at a different place in a different level or different setting. Sometimes it's an identity attachment to what they're doing, where every time they go play, their identity is at threat. Really tough to play freely that way, right? I mean, anxiety is almost the underlying thread to everything. Again, that's because that is our brain's primary defense mechanism. Anything we say is unacceptable is going to be perceived as a threat and therefore get anxiety and frustration in response. So they almost all look like that. The key is kind of helping that person kind of unearth a little bit what it is, because most of the time they go, I don't know why this keeps happening. I'm just feeling anxiety. And I haven't really explored how and why, which is okay. That's partly my job. Then the other is like the remedies that we typically throw on it. The just relax, be confident, be certain, just trust. Or even telling people just be present without really exploring what that means. And understanding that you only have as much room to be present as you are willing to accept all possibilities in the future.
It's a hollow command.
It is. That's exactly right. It's a hollow command. So, and then understanding a little bit about how your brain works, which is when you give it all these things, it's not that you're thinking negatively. It's now you're asking your brain, and it's trying to do exactly what you are asking it to do. So a player tells me, I told my brain, like, just don't hit it left. And I'm going to go, let me guess, it went 1,000 miles right? Because you told your brain, do not let this thing go left. And it went, you got it. It didn't go left. right? Or
Yeah.
don't screw this up. Well, you didn't really screw it up as bad as it could have been, but also it never had a chance to be what you wanted
Yeah.
it to. So the conversations can vary, but the underlying mechanisms in our brain and the underlying elements of our psychology are the same. By the way, no different than corporate world, the performing arts world, or the military world.
Yeah.
It's all our brain interacting with meaningful pursuits that include risk of things that we don't want. Failure, perhaps not getting the ROI that we really want,
Mm-hmm.
mistakes, at times, criticism and judgment from others, all of these things.
Talk about that. Share the story that you had in your book about the tour player, and that's the one that kind of grabbed me, because my son is a mini tour guy, getting ready to go to Q school, and this kid that I was just referring to getting ready to go to Q school. The ABC approach that you spoke of, like, tell that story.
So this is a way for us to, again, just try to explore and be skeptical of our thoughts. So the long and the short of the example in the book is that there was a player I was working with who is going to probably have to go to Q school or getting ready for it. But her thought behind it, the A-shaped thought, was, I have to get through the first time or I'll never get through. Needless to say, that's a lot of anxiety, because essentially if I don't thread the needle the first time, it will never be thread, is what it means. So again, if we look at this, it's not a negative thought. It's a very constricting thought. I have said it must go this way this time, or else it will never go that way, which means it's a long-term, widespread consequence. Okay, so it's just an A-shaped thought. It's the formula for anxiety for us. Okay, so we challenge this thought, not me telling her, don't think that, just think positive, I'm sure everything's going to be okay. It was like, time out a second. Because what this thought is really doing is going, anything other than this time is unacceptable, because your whole future is at stake. And if I put anybody in that, you're going to be in a threat response the entire time. Okay? So what we did, A stands for an event. In this case, it's playing Q school. So the thing that I am doing. B stands for the belief, which in this case is that thought. If it's not this time, it will never be. Okay. C stands for consequences, meaning when this event happens and you throw this belief on it, what do you actually get from it? And needless to say, anxiety is the primary player in this performance. Then there's also, if I have practice and it's not going well, I get super desperate. I start chasing a bunch of stuff. I deviate from practice plans. I'm having a hard time sleeping. When I get there, I start like all kinds of stuff where it's basically like no beneficial consequences whatsoever. Okay. So this is important for us to pay attention to, because if what I'm doing, if instead of a core belief, it was a golf club, and I told you, when you play golf, you play with this golf club, and this is what you get from it, and there's no benefit to it whatsoever, most people would chuck that golf club in the garbage and go find something that works better, right? D in this case stands for discredit. Discredit means I'm going to get really skeptical. I'm going to challenge this, not for whether it's positive or negative, good or bad, but whether it's true and whether it's actually beneficial to me. So essentially, I challenged her, go do a research for an hour and tell me if you can find anybody on the LPGA Tour who has gone to Q school, missed it, and then actually gotten to tour after that. And needless to say, like, happens all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, most people who get to tour, most, not all, but most, fail the first several times that they go through.
That's right.
Okay, so we already understood this is not true. Then I would anyway, we went through a series of things where we started to see the idea that you have created about how this must go and why is not true. Therefore, that opens the door for us to ask the question, well, what is true? Well, what's true is you would love to get through on the first time. And by the way, there would be some consequences attached to that. It's not like it's all roses if you don't. But are they things that you can handle? Not that they won't be challengeless or full of comfort, but can you handle them? And she gets to a credible yes and yes for both of those. Now you have a little bit more room to operate freely. And then you can start to go, well, then what do I need to focus on and what do I need to do in order to give myself the best chance for that? Not a guarantee that she was looking for.
Love it.
So
Love it.
that's detailed in the 4th section of the book for anybody who's curious.
Yeah,
and then
this is the best part, I think, the framework.
Yeah, there's a process, that ABC process. It's a well-established psychological method for addressing what they would call like irrational thinking. Irrational not meaning stupid, meaning not true and not useful. There's a whole section on that for how people can start to do that as well.
Awesome. You got a little more time?
A little bit.
Are you good?
Yeah.
All right, can we take a 2-minute break?
2-minute break.
Yeah, don't log off. We'll
Hang there.
edit this out. It's code for I've had too much water.
Sure.
All right, we're good. All right, so I got a couple more topics, and then I'll let you go, and then maybe a little daily habits if you got time.
Sure. I got about 20 minutes.
All right, perfect. Yeah, so let's help the juniors and the junior golf parents a little bit, right? Because I've heard you talk on other podcasts that have been fantastic advice. Talk a little bit about how we can make a successful junior golfer, right? And then also some advice to the parents of how they can be a better junior golf parent. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, I would urge any parent to consider, why do I want my kid to be a successful golfer? Is it for them or is it for me? Most parents want their kids to be successful golfers, or not most, but many, because it would be validating of their parenting, not because the kid actually necessarily wants that. In fact, if I told most parents what is involved with your kid actually getting to the top levels of golf and all that comes with it, you might not sign your kid up for it. So, important question is, why do I want my kid to be successful? Is it for them or is it for me? Other things we can start doing is starting to facilitate what is called a growth mindset. That is essentially helping my child believe that growth or getting better is a product of effort and focus and decisions, not raw talent. So people are born with different levels of, we might say, natural ability. They are not predictive of whether somebody gets to the top end of the learning curve at all. They're only predictive of success at the lower end of the learning curve, which is a fancy way of saying, if I'm just bigger and better than you early, I have an advantage. But by the time you get to the top end, which basically is like top end of junior golf, definitely into college and certainly into professional golf, natural ability plays almost no influence whatsoever, at least in differentiating people.
Right.
Okay. So growth mindset is the core belief that you get better over time with effort, focus, and decisions. The way that you reinforce that in children, especially, and build that belief for them is by praising them for what they do, not what they produce, and using verb-based feedback, not adjective-based feedback. So instead of describing your kid as talented or special, they are hardworking, they are focused, they are competitive, they play freely, they are open-minded, they are coachable. So anything that a child could do at any moment is what we are looking to praise from people. So a non-golf example would be your kid comes home with an A. Instead of going, good job, you're so smart, which is an adjective, you would say, I really liked how you studied for this test beforehand to be prepared to take it. Right.
I like that.
What that does is it empowers people to understand that if I want to get better at something or I need to perform under pressure, I focus on what I do in the present moment to be able to explore that. So there's, again, if parents want to get into it, I devote a significant amount of pages in the book to a growth and a fixed mindset because it is highly predictive. So at the top end of the learning curve, it is almost impossible to get there with a fixed mindset. You'll get chewed up and spit out before you get there because there's just too much anxiety and too many protective mechanisms involved. There's a long conversation with that. Another one, if I was just being like super frank with parents, it goes an awful long way, giving your kid freedom to try and, yes, perhaps fail. When we don't give kids permission to fail, and what that looks like is you play well, I parent you differently than if you don't. Or, oh, you played well, we're going to go get ice cream, but if you don't, I'm going to give you the riot act in the car on the way home. When we do that for kids, what we are doing is, on a very fundamental level, is we are essentially adding more risk than is actually involved with their performance. So what's at stake is not whether I'm making birdies or bogeys. It's whether my parent is going to have the same type of relationship with me. So in very fundamental terms in our field, this is our attachments. Children are innately built to build attachments with their caregivers, but one of their psychological needs in order for them to grow and enjoy things is that that attachment cannot be conditional, meaning you get A's and I'll love you, and if you don't, I won't. That type of interaction with children, you are teaching them anxiety, because what's at stake for them when they're competing is not what's at stake. There's the relationship with the parent on the other side, and you're teaching them anxiety is what you're teaching them. So when we tell children, go give me your best effort, and clearly define what that looks like, and then say, and by the way, if you screw it up, you screw it up. It's hard for parents to do because it doesn't feel like they're forcing their kids towards success. But what you're setting the stage for is that kid learning how to give themselves permission to perform freely without needing an outcome on the other side to tell them whether it's going to be okay or not okay. Right? So this non-conditional parenting of kids in sport is super, super important. Essentially, if your kid thinks, even senses, that you as a parent are going to approve or disapprove, be proud or not proud of them based on the outcome of what they do, you are teaching them anxiety, and that is going to follow them. The thing about teaching children anxiety when they're young is it will follow them into adulthood. Your brain is laying down pathways of you should worry about things because so essentially the A-shaped thinking is what you are teaching them, and then A-shaped operation and anxiety, and it will follow them into adulthood. So
yeah, the post-round conversation is definitely, I think from experience, because I was a coach and a dad of a junior golfer and a good player. So I always struggle with that because I couldn't separate the two hats. But give the parents an example of like how they should treat a post-round car ride home.
Yeah, so there's no rule anywhere that says you have to talk about a kid's performance in the car ride home. In fact, I would recommend don't. The better rule of thumb would be like, hey, I really want to hear about your performance or your round or whatever. Tell me when you're ready to talk about it. So it's on the child's terms, so they have some control and some autonomy over this. It's not imposed upon them, and you are going to be curious about it. You're going to be investigative, not judgmental. So the opposite of that is, they're in the car ride home. It's, why did you hit that club in that? Like, how could you miss that green? And why did you this, that, and a third? And you're just second guessing every single thing that they're doing. Instead, it'd be like the kids that did, hey, let's talk about, tell me about your round of golf. And they go, oh, hey, tell me about hole number 13. What's going on there? And then you can explore. And then the kid goes, oh, I was feeling a little bit anxious. Like, oh, so you played some shots through anxiety. What is it that you were anxious about? And now you can parent by being like, hey, look, that's a part of playing golf. You don't have to worry about it just because it happens. Or, I noticed you played great for these holes. Tell me about that. And then again, I'm looking for verbs. Oh, you were focused on this. You were committed to that. You were playing really freely. You were having fun, etc., etc. So you're helping them unearth the seeds of what makes the experience better and higher performing for them. Again, doesn't mean that they're going to be successful all the time, or that if they fail, you don't also explore that. But it's non-judgmental, it's non-conditional, and it is conveying to the kid, you can try and fail, and then we're going to try to figure out how to do it better next time. But the number one reason kids quit sport is the car ride home. Every single year. They do research. They ask kids, you quit. Why? Number one reason, car ride home, because I'm literally trapped in a car with my parent giving me the riot act about why I did this and why I didn't do that. And the fastest way to avoid the car ride home is to just not do the thing. And then therefore the kid quits.
There you go. That's gold. All right. Thank you for that, because I wanted to get that out there. I think it's going to be super helpful for parents and for players and kids. All right. So again, selfish guru here. A couple of daily habits, right? And some things that I've been doing. And you don't know my background, but I was a big runner for 20 years and, tried to stay in shape, and you wouldn't know it by looking at me now, but trying to get back into it. But one of my new daily habits, and I will backtrack a little bit. We asked the question about success. We have a lot of high performers on this show. Meditation always comes up, something, mindfulness, spiritual, whatever.
Mindfulness training, yeah.
Exercise, right? So these are all like common threads that we kind of see from so-called successful people. I've been getting into cold plunging, some cold therapy.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to give your thoughts on that. I've been doing it pretty much every day for like 6 months, so I'm pretty into it. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of benefits. So talk a little bit about that and what the benefits are.
Yeah, there's a ton. So cold exposure is one of heat and cold exposure have been things that humans have been doing for different cultures for thousands of years. The most modern research around it is kind of telling us why. Cold exposure specifically, there's two things. When I choose to do something painful, not necessarily dangerous, but painful, of my own volition, I begin to build my tolerance to discomfort. Okay, so me throwing you in the cold plunge versus you choosing to get into it, two different mechanisms in my brain. So the more I expose myself to pain, or we might say discomfort, in a self-chosen way, I am building tolerance to discomfort for other things that I choose to do. Neurologically, when you do any type of pain exposure, it's like discomfort again, not danger pain, but just pain. So that's a workout that's really hard, cold exposure, maybe doing something in front of other people where I'm going to be judged, but I choose to do it. What we often get is there's in our nervous system, it's kind of, think of it like a scale between pleasure and pain, or discomfort and comfort. And when we tip the scale in one direction, we get not just an equal and opposite, but a longer and deeper in the opposite direction. Right. So this is basically why we get addicted to stuff. So if I smoke cigarettes, it feels really good when I smoke it, but then I feel all worse for longer when it's gone, which means I need a cigarette to then tip the scale in the opposite direction. And then it gets a longer, deeper in the opposite. So now I need more cigarettes more often. And hence why there's withdrawal from something like that. When you're doing cold exposure, you're doing the opposite. You're tipping it toward discomfort first and choosing to do so. Yeah. And your brain is then rewarding you longer and deeper on the other side. Specifically, it comes in the form of long-term doses of dopamine, which is the neuromodulator in our brain for pursuit and motivation, and norepinephrine, which is another way of saying adrenaline, but not in a I'm jacked kind of way, but essentially it's like focus and energy, right? So I'm building my tolerance to discomfort, and my brain is reinforcing me with chemicals because I went through something difficult, which is a really cool thing. So this is why exercise is so helpful to us for a lot of health benefits. It's self-induced stress that creates the types of things that make us healthier, happier, and feel good, right? Now, the caveat to this is if you're going to be an athlete, you want to make sure you keep your cold exposure before you go work out, because the cold exposure also decreases your inflammation response. Inflammation responses are not necessarily a bad thing. We need them to heal. So if you went and hit balls for 2 hours, you need an inflammation response to heal up all the muscles and the soft tissue and the bones and your skin and all that stuff that's getting chewed up while you're doing that. So when you do your cold exposure before working out, one of the things we know, you get that dopamine and norepinephrine, which then fuels your workout, which is really cool. And also when you do it after you work out, not only does it decrease the inflammation response so you don't get the healing benefits, it also disrupts protein synthesis and anabolic processes, which are the things where your basically muscles repair themselves and grow back bigger and stronger. So as long as you have it in the right place in terms of your physical activity, there's a ton of benefit to it. General rule of thumb for those getting started, start with a water that is tolerable to you. You don't need to just jump into the coldest thing that you've ever done. You can gradually work your way to it. And as also a general rule of thumb, like you kind of want to stay above about 50 degrees. The people that are going well below that, you can do it, but you are starting to then get into some limits where it might be hypothermic.
Yeah, I'm at 38 to 40 right now. And
you're in the danger zone and loving every second of it.
I call it doing hard stuff. Yeah, it's
That's
just
exactly
like,
right.
people used to ask me why I train for these marathons, or
Yeah.
I'm like, again, it's just that risk reward. I just want to push my body to something that I don't think it can do, and then it's the benefits on the other side. But
if you took a lot of human performance psychology and said, if you were going to boil it down into something, how does somebody get more confident and get better at something? It's do hard things, but with a facilitating mindset. So my first domino is in place, and then I do hard things. And then pair that, by the way, with appropriate rest and sleep.
Gotcha. Is there any research? Because I've had this conversation with one of my other friends that we've talked about fitness and cold plunging, of the time that you get the most benefit. Because I feel like I'm just like going more and more and more, and I do it every day. Is there any research behind that?
My understanding is that there is a certain point where, it's kind of like a maximum dosage of something where, if you did it for 20 minutes versus 30 minutes, the extra 10 minutes wouldn't provide you a ton of benefit.
Yeah.
There's mixed research about where that is, but it's usually about 20 minutes is my
20 minutes a week?
20 minutes a day.
Oh, a day?
At a time, gosh. Yeah. You definitely don't need to do that. Most of the research shows that if you're doing a total of 30 minutes a week, you are well above the minimum dosage.
Okay. Yeah, because as I say, you're not staying in there at 38 degrees for 20 minutes.
That again be very
4 or 5
dangerous.
minutes.
We're not recommending to any of your listeners to risk hypothermia. If you did 2 to 4, 2 to 5 minutes, even like a 3-minute average, like a couple of times a week, you would be getting that. And again, like a cold plunge is one way. You can also just go outside in the cold. That one's a little bit less controlled. Cold shower is also one of them. The cold plunge is one of the ones where you're in it literally and figuratively.
Yeah, Dr. Huberman, you probably follow him. Yeah, it's basically calls it getting over the adrenaline walls. So it's like when you stay in it, at 38 degrees for 3 or 4 minutes, you've got about 4 or 5 adrenaline. It's the first 30 seconds is like the main, calls it the get the F out stage.
That's right.
And then you get past that and you can kind of do it. But you build up, right?
So we had mentioned like it builds our tolerance to discomfort.
Right.
What discomfort does is it's trying to get us to eject from something. Okay. So in that case, it's you ejecting from the cold water.
Yeah.
But it's also I'm ejecting from a situation where I'm in a round of golf and it might not go my way, or a very difficult shot. The agitation, the discomfort is trying to get. So anxiety feels crappy to us via our vagus nerve, to bring things full circle, because it's trying to get us to eject, because the fastest way to survive a threat is to not engage with it in the first place, right? So when I intentionally engage with discomfort and I stay in it past my ejection reflex, what I'm learning to do is down-regulate and stay engaged with something even when it's uncomfortable, and do it because I want to and how I want to, not simply because of what my first thought or feeling or impulse would be.
Right? So before we wrap up, you got to tell us what you do, because you're a fit guy. I know you did a bit of running too as well, right? So what are your daily habits that keep you sharp?
Daily habits. So morning, the dog goes out and gets fed. I will then usually jump into a cold shower. Or if it's winter here in Chicago, I will just take the dog out with a t-shirt and shorts on, which is plenty.
There's your cold plunge.
Yeah. I will do usually about a 5 or 6 minute mindfulness practice. For me, I'm right now leaning more toward contemplative, where I'm just kind of just tuning into what's going on internally. Then at some point during the day, I'm going to get on the bike. I don't do too much running anymore, trying to protect the knees a little bit. So stationary bike. The dog's going to go for a walk, and then I will probably find some time in the weight room I don't lift too heavy anymore, but it's a challenging workout. And I do love a good combat workout, cardio, kickbox, something where you get to really push yourself to a painful level and beat the crap out of something too.
There you go.
Yeah. And maybe I'll hit a few putts during the day if I get a chance.
I was going to say, you play a little golf as well, right?
I play a little bit, yeah.
There you go. Awesome,
Very
man.
good.
Well, I appreciate your time. I mean, I've kept you probably longer than you thought. I feel like we could do, 2 or 3 more hours. I got a lot more notes, but I really appreciate that. This was fantastic, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Tell everybody how they can follow you on socials and drop your website and if they want to
Sure.
work with you.
Well, my website is BTS, Beneath the Surface, mindset.com, BTS.com. You can also catch me and my co-host Chase, who you know,
Yeah.
on the same name podcast, Golf Beneath the Surface, which you can find wherever podcasts are. Uh, I'm not on social media, so those are the only places that you can catch me. Or you can catch me probably somewhere around most golf tournaments or some places. So I always encourage people to come say hi if they find me. But those would be the two places you can catch me online.
Awesome. And hopefully it's not finalized, but you're going to be speaking at my section teaching summit in February. If we can work out the details, man,
I
we're going to be excited to have you there.
I have it on the calendar. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I
Very
appreciate
good.
you, my man. You're the best. And I've shared your podcast and your interviews with so many of my players because you can explain it and you know it way better than us hacking golf pros. So we appreciate your book and we appreciate the information you're giving out, what you're doing for the golf community.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor. Looking forward to talking soon, my friend.
Absolutely.
All right. Be well.